Hey, welcome to Revive Ministries. We are excited. We're excited because we're entering to the 100th episode, and all this month we're commemorating it, and I'm bringing back some returning guests. Today is no different. We have Sebastian Lopez, is a veteran podcast. He's been in from the start. He's actually convinced me to even do this. So, welcome, Sebastian. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Excited to be back, and honored to be considered a veteran in your podcast, man. That's exciting.
It's about it being annoyingly consistent. That's what I tell my guests.
That's the key.
Anyway, all those who are listening, I just want to share with you that if you are in crisis, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline.
Mm-hmm.
This is in the U.S., but I encourage you, wherever you're at, wherever walk of life, to find out what resources are available out there for you. Sebastian, I want to ask you a few questions, if that's okay.
That's
you're
fine.
a veteran. You can take all this stuff.
It's your podcast, man. It's your podcast, your rules.
I just try to be a little bit more gentle in the approach. First question: why must we forgive ourselves and others to truly find healing? We've been talking about that a lot in this podcast, so take some time, think about it.
How much time do I have?
I don't know. Whatever you want. We talked about.
I'm joking. Why must we forgive ourselves and others to try to truly find healing? Yeah, I think it's crucial. I don't know if we've talked about it. I'm sure you have, and inside conversations had this discussion, and there's just this connection, I think, between us and really being able to find healing for ourselves first, right? I mean, you can go so many different ways with this, but I think it's important to really, and sometimes it might be it may be seen as a selfish move to say I need time for myself, but I think it's very important for us to do that, right? Because we can't really go out there, whether you're a caregiver or someone that helps in different professions to help others heal and get better. You really can't do that unless you yourself have experienced what that healing looks like, right? And that doesn't mean that you have to be 100% to go out to help others and to serve and to give back, but it does mean that you have to at least be in that process of finding that healing for yourselves, right? And that's why I think when I take it to the spiritual sense in the work that I do as a pastor, I can't give what I haven't received myself, right? And so I can't motivate people to spend time with God or read the Bible, pray, do acts of service and love if I myself have not done that. People will see through me and say, hey, I can tell you're not someone that's actually following what you're saying, right? So I think it's important in the same way. Many times I think when we're talking about forgiveness and holding grudges and all this and pain that we carry, it's a lot of times it has to do, and the healing begins when we forgive ourselves, maybe for bringing about the pain that caused others, that brought pain to others, or maybe it's forgiving ourselves for not fighting those that were maybe abusing us or hurting us, or we were in toxic relationships. You have to be able to forgive yourself for not knowing or for not being able to fight as much as you wish you could have. And then that kind of leads you to the next point of then trying to find healing through forgiving others of what's happened or working through that. So I think it always begins with ourselves. God and through the Bible really works at that. Before addressing the community, he wants you to really find the need for you as an individual to connect and to find healing, and then you'll be able to go out and forgive others to really continue in that journey of healing. Hopefully that made sense. I don't know if I
no, that makes sense, because I like how you mentioned this boundaries, and that's where I'm going to go next, because we with this whole what we had experienced 2020, I was talking with my wife, and I was thinking January. I could not even fathom what great things has happened, then how things kind of propelled. For me, I knew things were going to happen eventually, but one thing that was apparent for me was just how much did change. And then and part of that change was this distancing that everyone talks about, like this social distancing and physical distancing. What is the difference? I know that's just a simple, but we talked about this in the very beginning of COVID. And why is it, I didn't mention this, but as you answer this question, ask, think about the lessons we can learn and why it's important today.
The difference between social distancing and physical distancing. Yeah, we definitely hit on this a while back, and it was probably in the early stages of this, right, of COVID and the lockdown and all that. There's definitely, I think it's very easy when you are physically distancing from someone to then, I think, become a recluse and become because I think there is a great need, which is a hard part about this, right? There is an actual great need for community that is felt in an actual physical sense, right? Just simple things, not just going to church or going to the gym or going to concerts or movie theaters and stuff, but even simple things as going to the store to seeing other people alive or walking around other than your family, right? That physical distancing is very hard. But I think more than that, because of the situation that we're in and trying to balance this, right, I think it's important to make that distinction between social distancing and physical distancing, that though you are not seeing people on the regular or not going to these events or places that you were going to before because of the physical distancing, that you're still engaging somehow with people, right? And though it's not the same, I know it, I feel it as a pastor, it's hard. I've seen the effects it's had, not just on myself, but on our church. But pick up a phone and call someone, get on a Zoom conversation. I've been asked to help out in leading out something called the Love Potluck, which is where single Seventh-day Adventists, which is the denomination and religion and the faith that I belong to, come together to try to, it's kind of speed dating, right? A healthy way of meeting people and speed dating. So there's opportunities, there's ways to do that. And I think that's how we fight against social distancing while still maintaining physical distancing. And so pick up a phone, call someone, text someone, email someone. I mean, even here, I think we're getting to a point where you're kind of getting used to, now when I'm on Zoom, I'm like, oh, I miss these people so much, whereas before it was like, you're on Zoom and you're like, I wish I was there in person. Now it's like, oh man, okay, you're here. Wow. You actually, kind of like how it happens in movies. Remember, when we used to go to movie theaters, right? Where you would go into it, and when you come out, it really felt like you were in the movie, right? Because your mind really thinks it's there. I think that's kind of the phenomenon that happens now in some of our Zoom meetings, unless we're really fatigued with Zoom, which that's another big reason. But I think it's important to really be intentional in connecting with people. And maybe it means sometimes going to the park and somewhere outdoors, or wearing your mask and meeting up with someone. But when we're at home, when we're trying to maintain these distances, to really be intentional in reaching out. And maybe you'll have your days off, and so it'll be a blessing to, because you've been intentional, for someone else that has received that intentionality to then return it and say, hey, yo, you're always checking up on me. Today you didn't. I want to see how you're doing, right? So kind of that's how the community, I think, aspect comes into it, where Robert may be having a horrible day, and I can text him and be like, hey, Robert, what's up? I haven't heard from you today. How's it going? And vice versa. So big difference.
I like that, intentional, because there's this fear of being complacent. This fear that, our connections do matter, and we talked about this. But I remember in the very onset of this COVID, I said we're going to have to find creative ways. Yeah, we're social. We're social beings, whether whatever faith-based or not. We need each other's contact.
That's true.
We need to connect. So I do like what I found really nice was seeing people get out of their box, being creative in this unique situation, and I feel that you kind of saw some really good things out of it. But on that same note, I want to talk about the next question, which is kind of segues. But what other lessons do you think you learned in 2020? Because there's a lot. 2020 is a lot to wrap. Because one thing I fear doing these podcasts is that it was a struggle, but then we look at the vaccine and then we get the vaccine and we forget. How easy is it to forget the lessons we could have learned or might have benefited us in 2020? And it happens all the time. Like tragedy strikes, something big happens in the world. It was everyone was there. Everyone's all there, just all there learning these lessons. But then when things get back to normal, that's where it gets, sometimes the hardest. For some individuals who were more affected, you know what I mean?
Right. That's 100%. Yeah. It's a crazy thing thinking about how this has really changed our normal, right? In terms of what's normal now. I was talking to my barber today when I went to get a haircut, and we were just reminiscing on what it was living a year ago this time, right? What we were doing. Now when I look at TV, watch a TV show or watch a movie and I don't see social distancing or mask, I'm like panicking. I'm like, what's going on? Or you watch an old football game, old basketball game, and you see everyone so jumbled, and you're like, oh, this is the worst night. This is a super spreader. And to think how much even our mindset subconsciously has already changed. When we see things, we start reacting, right? Because we're like, that's not normal. That's not how things should be right now. When in reality, it was how it was a year ago. We could walk out. You can go anywhere into a crowded building and be fine, right? And so there's been a big change. And I think one thing with that is like, how have you approached that change, right? Because a lot of times when we talk about change, it's like self-change. How can I become how can I improve myself? How can I get better? Blah, blah. How can I motivate myself to change and bring about a change? And this was forced upon us to an extent, right? Because this virus has taken over 300,000 lives here in America. So how do you react to that change when it's not something you want to do many times or wanted to do, right? And that's one of the lessons that I've seen. You've seen a lot of people react in different ways to this change that has been brought about them. Some are readily able to change and wanting and desiring because of the betterment of all. Others not so much, not because they don't care about others, because they just miss that normalcy that they used to have. So that's one of the interesting ways how different people view change and how they react to change that wasn't brought by their own decisions to an extent.
I just want to mention, in 2001, when I was in the military, when 9/11 happened, before you were able to go through security, even if you didn't have a ticket.
Right.
Your friends off, your family's off. Now, we look back, you're like, that is not allowed. You're like,
you cannot go that far. Well, I mean, there's an episode. It was, when was it? Well, I mean, this was a while back. We were watching an episode of Friends, checking it out, and it was one where, was it Friends or The Office? I don't know. Where it was one, they literally walk straight in right to the gate. And it's like that love scene where they're running and they're going through, very minimal security. They're at the gate with the ticket and they're like, "Don't leave," And it's like now you can't even.
Yeah, you can't even do that.
You're at the security waving by and you're turning around and then that's it. So a lot of changes. That's very good.
A lot of changes. Yeah. Last question. Obviously, in Revive Ministry, we do a lot of quotes. So I want to share with you a quote, but first, I want you to kind of think of these questions when reading a quote. Like, how does this quote read to you personally?
Okay.
And what lessons do you think we can learn from this quote? And I'll shift back if you need to read it. You need to know the question again. But
thank you.
It's a 2-part thing because it's super long. I couldn't put it in the banners. Fit it there, but it says, "You may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated. In fact, it may be necessary to encounter the defeats so you can know who you are, what you can rise from, and how you can still come out of it." Maya Angelou. So I'll just put the first part up there.
Yeah, put that in. Yeah. So the question is, what is my reaction to this quote, right?
Yeah, you're personally first.
Yeah, man. You may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated. In fact, let's see. It must be necessary to encounter the defeats. Yeah, you know what? And I mean, this is kind of, in a personal note, as you know, Robert, and now your listeners will know. My dad passed from COVID, December 25, 2020. Very shocking. Very just a incredibly fast decline from one week to another. And so for me, that's kind of, not that I see it as a defeat that I could have, there's not much I could have done, but that, and then getting COVID myself the week after, and so it's so interesting how it's I really feel that first sentence there, that first line. You may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated, right? And for me, as we've talked about before, my foundation, if it weren't for my faith, I would be crushed, and I'm sad, I'm devastated. I miss my dad a lot. I think about him often, and I wish I could call him up and talk and all that. But it's so true, right? You can encounter many defeats, but it is possible to not be defeated. There's a, and if it's okay to share, there's a verse off the top of my head, that it's Paul writing. I think it's in Corinthians, and he says we're oh man, now I went blank.
I think
it's the one that says, we're hard pressed on every side, but we're not crushed. We're perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted but not abandoned, struck down but not destroyed. And so Paul's very saying, he's making his case for Christians that were being persecuted. Say, hey, look, no matter what you're facing, whatever it is that's facing, even if you're feeling like you're being enclosed and you're about to be crushed, you're not going to get to the point where you're completely crushed, right? Yeah, for a season, for a moment, for a time being, you may be in a valley of just like, you might feel like you're going through a war and you're losing every battle you're on, but that doesn't mean that you are that's the end, right? That's the end where you're, so I think it's important to, and I guess that'd be a conversation for us. How do we have that mindset that no matter how many defeats we face, we ourselves are not defeated, right? I think we hear a lot of times from, famous inventors and people that have done things, right? Where they're like, Thomas Edison, tried how many times? Thousands of times for the light bulb. And then every time was a defeat, but he wasn't defeated himself. So he kept trying, because he's like, I know I'm close. I know I can do this. So I think it's important to really think about what is it that will help you in the midst of this defeat or the defeats that you're facing to keep going, so that you're not like, oh, I'm a failure. I'm a defeated failure, because you're not. And as the quote continues, if you can help me, it may be necessary to encounter the defeats. And the next one is, so you can know who you are, what you can rise from, and how you can still come out of it. And I think, that's powerful for me. I'm sorry, that's my dog.
Don't worry about it. It's fine. So I do like, when people think about like defeating, like getting up, you falling down, getting up, or like going through, sometimes they think it's like this loud thing, but sometimes I found in my own personal, just the hope of like, could be just simply saying at the end of it all, I'm going to try one more time. That's it. It's not, the thing is, it's not that you have it all figured out. It's not like a huge scenario where you have like this huge expression of courage. No, sometimes simply it's just, I'm tired. This hurts. I'm sad, but I'm going to try again tomorrow. That's it. I remember many days in my own recovery. That's all I said. I said, I'm going to try again one more time. I think sometimes when we think about our lives and how crushing some of the losses we may have, especially looking back at 2020, we're also reminded of how much we do have. And I think Sebastian might have got off. His camera went out. But with that being said, I'm going to also read this one quote while I wait for him. It kind of goes in line with what we've been saying. Let me go to it. If you give me a second. That's right here. It's from George Bernard Shaw. and I'm gonna share with you right now. I think it's right here. Um, I think it really talks about how even in our darkest times. So let me go. Let's see. 1 second. Yeah, it reads this. This is what it reads. It's George Bernard Shaw. He says, "A life spent making mistakes is not only more honorable but more useful than a life spent in doing nothing." So, with that being said, I hope we can get Sebastian back on. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about the exciting things that we're trying to do this month um, in the podcast, 100th episode. What we're trying to do is we're going to give a giveaway. And there was a question that I going to have Sebastian ask, but just for the sake of time, if he comes back, basically, if you read the screen, it's info@reviveministriesfl.com. And I'll hear Sebastian's back.
Sorry about that, guys. Sorry about that.
No problem. No problem. I shared a quote,
Yeah.
As George Bernard Shaw, as we wrap up that last question. A life spent making mistakes is not only more honorable, but more useful than a life spent in doing nothing. That's George good. Bernard.
And some people would rather do nothing than make mistakes, right? So
yeah. But yeah, I was just telling everyone the exciting news that we're doing a giveaway, and there's a question that Sebastian's going to ask, and then on March 31st, I said the last day, but March 31st, the first person to get all we have like 4 episodes lined up, so I think there's 4 questions. All the details will be at the end of this video. It'll be all updated, but here's a question. I'm gonna have Sebastian read it. Here's a question.
When was Sebastian's first episode on Revive Ministry Podcast uploaded? Ooh, that's a good one.
That's a good one. It's a good one. Yeah. So, those who are listening, you could go through your wherever you listen to the podcast, whatever platform, and you just scroll back to like the antiquated,
back all the way.
In time. Yeah. But with that being said, thank you, Sebastian, so much. I just want to remind people it's going to be on the last day of March that whoever gets all the questions right will get some prize that we're trying to figure out right now. But there's going to be other runner-up prizes, so all the details will be in the end. But I just want to say thank you, Sebastian, for coming here and just sharing your insight. I always value you in this coming and being a guest in this podcast. Was annoyingly consistent. That's what we're trying to do.
No, I mean, that's one of the qualities I admire about you. And I'm sure the other the participants and stuff you've had on can testify to that. But yeah, I mean, you get the stuff done, right? And so just so excited to see when you started and starting up and to where you are now, the 100th episode, and how, in the midst of the pandemic, still keeping it going and navigating, all these cool videos and audio and all that stuff. So very proud of you and just excited for the message and the work that you're doing on behalf of others, right? Of just bringing awareness to mental health and suicide and talking about family, just all the episodes and topics you've talked about, right? And so it's been a blessing to be a part and help out, and looking forward to many more episodes.
For me, it's always been just about, for the longest time, I felt like I wasn't heard, because I was forever. That's your perception, I had to forgive myself, and I had to forgive others, and I have to move forward, and a lot of that is adapting to change. Honestly, I tell some of my peers, like I do a support group. This COVID-19 feels very familiar. I had my own little bubble of uncertainty a lot of times in my life.
Wow.
So So for me, I always it's not about quote unquote being right. And me, it's about providing a safe place for people to share. Because if I'm super right, if I'm so right, Sebastian, what does that mean? The other people are so wrong.
Yeah,
and we're way too divided. For me, I know at the simplest point, when I think of the story of John Lennon, and he answers the teacher, "What does he want to be when he grows up? I want to. That's what I want to be happy. That's it. That's it.
That's
so, thank you, everyone who's listening, and as always, thanks for listening. Hi, this is Revive Ministries. A little information on the giveaway. At the end of this episode you just watched, there was a question, and by the end of the month you should have 4 questions. And on the 31st at 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can submit your answers to info@reviveministriesfl.com. The first one with 4 correct answers will get a prize, and as we get closer to that time, we will give you more information on the prizes. But I just want to make note of the date. So if this is the beginning, the first Sunday of March, you cannot submit your answers until the very end of March 31st. But I'm excited. It's 100 episodes, and I couldn't do it without your support and all you who are listening. So thank you. And I plan on continuing on and crossing other milestones in the future. If you are listening and you want to reach out and know more about Revive Ministries, you can always go to the website if you haven't already. But like we say, stay safe, and thanks for listening.